If there is one number that has surely caused controversies throughout the NASCAR Cup Series, that has to be the number 45. Due to his actions toward Kyle Larson, Bubba Wallace has been the center of attention due to his actions towards his replacement, who didn't really have a great debut with this number either. But with NASCAR's penalty against Bubba Wallace, one couldn't help but wonder if the NASCAR gods intervened and gave the number 45 a fair verdict. Although it wasn't Nemechek's fault that Wallace caused that crash, could it be that Wallace cursed the number 45 car and 2311 Racing finally got what it deserved? Let's go back and see how everything started. At the Las Vegas Motor Speedway, Bubba Wallace has been passed by Kyle Larson, with the latter pinching Wallace into the wall while completing the overtake. This is a completely natural overtake, and one shouldn't mind or be aggressive just because he was overtaken in this way. Still, this wasn't the case with Bubba Wallace, as he was really nervous and aggressive, and then caused a crash on a deliberate matter, making his case of being an infamous driver even stronger. The penalty that NASCAR decided to give to Bubba Wallace was a funny one, to say the least, with one race ban. But we'll get to that later, as we want to tell you the sequence of events that happened afterwards and why we think that the number 45 is cursed from Bubba's actions. After NASCAR announced the one-race ban for Wallace, he was replaced by John Nemechek at the Homestead. Nemechek was one of the favorites to win the NASCAR Camping World Truck Series Championship, but due to an accident that happened at the last race, Nemechek was denied entrance to the championship 4. Everything started on Saturday when Nemechek scrubbed the wall early in Saturday's race and lost valuable laps. On Sunday, he had a very fast car, and he was hoping to make up for all the lost laps on Saturday, as he replaced Bubba Wallace in 2311 Racing, driving under the number 45. On lap 30, Nemechek crashed on the exit of turn 2 and spun to the inside of the track. On top of that, Nemechek made slight contact with the inside retaining wall. John Nemechek had a really interesting choice when it comes to the car design, and that is placing his name on the car. This is something that not many drivers have practiced doing, and with John doing that, one cannot help but wonder whether that had a psychological impact of John's accident on Sunday. What were the results of the drivers, and how were they able to capitalize on Nemechek's situation? The final 60 laps at Homestead Miami Speedway saw a big swing of fortune for drivers like William Byron, Ryan Blaney, and Denny Hamlin. The outcome of this race could impact which of them will race for a championship in 2 weeks. As things stand now, Byron holds the final transfer spot heading into next week's round of 8 finale at Martinsville Speedway, which will set the field for the championship race at Phoenix Raceway on November 6th. As of now, Hamlin is just 5 points behind Byron, while Blaney has an 18-point deficit behind Byron. Hamlin was one of only 2 playoff drivers to finish in the top 10, placing himself in the 7th position, while Byron salvaged his day at the Miami Homestead by finishing 12th, and Blaney finished 17th. We just had one bad run. We restarted second and kind of maintained in second for maybe a couple of laps, and then the car fell off and disappeared. That one run was just really weird, so we lost a lot of track position, said Byron. But what happened to Hamlin? He also has huge implications on the 2311 Racing curse. And given the fact that he is a co-owner of the team, there was a huge stroke of bad luck at the Miami Homestead for Denny too. Denny was running P7 and had a very decent race up until the 3rd stage of the race. So basically the first 2 stages were executed perfectly well from Hamlin, but when the 3rd stage came, Denny had an accident and lost a significant amount of laps. This means that if by any chance the NASCAR gods decide to intervene, Hamlin was also involved in their intervention due to the fact that he is the co-owner of the team. Denny was constantly at the receiving end of things with how his team got rid of Kurt Busch and decided to replace him much earlier than everybody else thought. On top of that, you have the Wallace behavior, and one couldn't help but wonder whether or not there is a divine force that decided to intervene in a situation where NASCAR is helpless. Regardless, let's go back to number 45 and the curse that revolves around it. Wallace's actions at the Las Vegas Motor Speedway were something that many NASCAR fans were quick to judge, as a professional shouldn't act the way he did. On top of that, the penalty of just one race for Bubba is something that was declared as a joke, and the consistency of the sport was bashed by the fans and the experts. If you compare the penalty that NASCAR has given to Joe Gibbs Racing with the loose tire incident that happened at the Las Vegas Motorsport Speedway to Kyle Busch, you'll see how big of a gap NASCAR has created by giving away penalties. Deliberate actions, crashing into your rival and then pushing and shoving him while he has absolutely zero fault for what just happened, is something that is punished less severely than a non-deliberate accident for a loose tire incident. Should Joe Gibbs be punished for the loose wheel incident? Absolutely. It is a hazard on the track, although it didn't hurt anybody. But banning the crew chief of Kyle Busch, who is Ben Beshore, the jackman, Darrell Edwards, and the tire changer, Michael Hicks, is just too severe of a penalty if you consider what Wallace was given in his retaliation against Kyle Larson. On top of that, the Las Vegas Motor Speedway marked the last event that Busch will have with his crew chief, Busch Beshore, given the fact that Ben won't be available in the next 4 events. Busch will move from Joe Gibbs Racing to Richard Childress Racing for the 2023 season, as Joe Gibbs are yet to announce a replacement for the vacant spot that Ben left behind. If you analyze Wallace's actions deeper, you cannot help but notice that the penalty he received from NASCAR is just way too low, and therefore, it is rightfully considered a joke. It seems like Wallace's reaction was one of a sore loser, and that is just not accepted in the sport. That is something that Kyle Petty has spoken about, saying that NASCAR needs to do a much better job of penalizing a driver that is constantly in the spotlight thanks to his actions. It's okay to spin a guy and knock him in the wall and you only get one? The optics of that for NASCAR are not good. They're just not good. They didn't leave that wheel off intentionally. They didn't. What he did was intentional. He can say the steering broke, but he never lifted off the accelerator at the same time he drove back down the racetrack. This was an unprofessional move. What we saw out of Kyle Larson was a champion and a professional reaction to the situation. The way he backed away from Bubba and the things he had to say. What bothered me is I have driven race cars, and to get hooked in the right rear, it is so freaking intentional. You have no recourse, no chance to recover. At that point in time, Kyle Larson is along for the ride. The way the car spun, the way it hit Christopher Bell's car, it goes driver's side in. You've seen Kurt Busch and we've seen Alex Bowman. They backed in and they're not here right now. They're not driving because of concussion. This could have been the season-ending, if not a career-ending accident for him. Is it possible that a force greater than the nature of what we can understand, something divine, intervened and gave car number 45 a fair verdict? True, the driver inside of it wasn't at fault for what happened, but at the end of the day, that is the car that caused the accident that also saw Christopher Bell, one of the candidates for the championship, being swept away as collateral damage. NASCAR has put themselves into a lot of controversy with their decisions, and the fact that they need to do a much better job is truly something that needs to be implemented as soon as possible. Maybe it is a huge coincidence, but on 2 consecutive weekends, the car with number 45 has been involved in 2 incidents, one of which was deliberate, while the other one was a divine compensation for the joking penalty that was applied to Bubba Wallace. The next event is Martinsville, and this is the race that will decide who will be in the top 4 for the final race. Although we cannot wait to see the outcome of it, rest assured that NASCAR needs to conduct a better penalty system for drivers that are just losing their cool outside of it. What happened to John Nemechek could be a God's reminder that the NASCAR divine is watching everything, and penalties need to be given where they are due. What do you think about the accident involving Nemechek? Let us know in the comments below.